But actually, when you've paid as much money and when you've taken a massive chance on a world champion Korean and they come in and they're not that good and they don't work that well with your team, I don't think that's actually unreasonable for that person to then suggest like, well, you get what you paid for, didn't you? I had Dandy before, he was pretty good, and now I've gotten Bengi and I didn't pay, because remember, part of it was if they'd pay as much for Dandy again. Well, I've gotten Bengi, well, yeah, you get what you paid for, so I'm kind of just having to deal with what we got because the team had a very bad performance. Now add into that all the shit about this is how he obviously thinks the whole time. Like, at this point, not only is this person behaving in a very erratic and irrational manner, but this is just so incredibly childish, the way they conceive of the world. It's like that thing where, because you don't like someone, they're not just someone who did something wrong or did something terrible. They're like 24/7 some comic book villain. Like the idea that the whole time the Vici gaming guy is there mistreating Bengi, and the whole time in his brain he's just thinking, this is what you get paid for, this is what you get paid for, this is what you get what you paid for, get what you paid for, Bengi shit, get what you paid for. And then Bengi's like, could I have what? Shut the fuck up! If I wanted to pay for you to drink water, then I wouldn't have fucking... Yeah, fucking Dandy didn't drink water, did he? Just existed on pure skill. Like, no, he wasn't doing that. That's unreasonable to even suggest as much, isn't it? What the fuck has that got to do with his comments here? Like, a lot of these guys, like him, their whole identity is based on how good they are at the game. So when they get very good at the game, then they can feel like they're succeeding as a person. They don't have to be like, I'm smart or I'm funny. No, I'm one of the best at the game. And you can see the fucking results there and you can't argue with it. And if you talk shit, I can talk shit back to you because I can beat you in the game and I can beat you in this realm as well. Yeah, I like that actually. And I think this is exactly a great point that he says that needs to be fostered and tempered, like put it in a more productive channels, figure out when not to say things in terms of PR so that you still retain that edge, you're still working the same way, still driven, but you don't have some of the flare-ups that some of these people can have, the Froggins, the Forgivens of the world, Soaz is. But the idea that it shouldn't be knocked out of him is a very key detail. I always tell this story, I've told it many times, but I'll repeat it here. There's a story when Phil Jackson, who at the time had already won 6 NBA titles as the coach of the Bulls, came in 1999 to the LA Lakers. And the LA Lakers had one of the most talented and deep lineups in the NBA. They had Shaq, who was arguably the best player in the NBA. And then they had Kobe Bryant, who was this fantastic, he wasn't a rookie at the time, he'd been in the league a couple of years, but he was one of the fantastic rising young talents. But the problem was, Kobe Bryant was someone who already kind of wanted his grasp, his reach exceeded his grasp. He wanted more than he was capable of at that point in time. And so he was driven to try and be the best player on the team and to try and show other people up and to try and do more than he was capable of. And what's funny is an assistant coach was talking to Phil Jackson. He said something along the lines of like, oh, maybe we should like bench him some when he does these sorts of things. Or maybe we should just tell him, don't do any of that. That's not your job. You're not capable of that. And Phil Jackson said something along the lines of, no, because even though it's a problem right now, one day he will be a great player. And if we take away that edge he has now, that drive he has now, that is what will make him one of the best players one day. And so if you kind of beat that out of him, or you try and tame the wild stallion, as it were, it will never then have the same wildness, the same fire, the same force, the same spirit that it had before. And therefore you never must break that aspect. You try and foster it and harness it because you want to make use of it and you want it to exist still. And that's a key point I think we can make about Perks there. So in the early days of the internet, I used to always read everything, even when I was a journalist, but that was back when I had 4,000 Twitter followers. That was back when my content was on sites, but it was a much smaller community of more hardcore fans and players. So back then, the whole point of why I could read everything is because if people constantly insulted me and tried to degrade my work and downplay it and lied about me, it would be a few people. It'd be a handful of people. It'd be the odd asshole. So guess what? Yeah, that doesn't bother me. I have a strong enough personality and sense of identity that I don't really mind. In fact, other people can have their other opinion. I think that's fine. I'm not really a fan of people lying and being unethical and in that sense, literally like libeling and slandering me. But I certainly think people can be critical and sometimes negative. But if it's the odd comment, yeah, I'm fine with that. I can just rolls off my back, no problem. I always give this analogy though. A lot of people might be like that. Like even though most people wouldn't fit this analogy, you could imagine it at least. Imagine they're walking down the street and you walk in and one guy just says, "Hey asshole," and you're like, "Who the fuck is it? What the fuck?" Or you walk along and because you're wearing the t-shirt of a band, someone says, "That band's fucking shit. You fucking retard." And you go, whatever. The point is, each of these in isolation, you could just go, well, no big deal. They don't know who I am, whatever. I don't really know who the fuck they are, whatever. It's just an opinion. Anyone can have an opinion. Why would that affect me? But if you walked down that street and seemingly, based on who the vocal people were, every person who spoke to you was like, asshole, you must fucking really hate that other band. Oh, pathetic little fanboy of that team. If every person, you dickhead, and you walk down the street, and by the time you got to the end of the street, like 300 people had said it, and by the end, because they're all popping up, it's just a massive, it's all, you can hear it all, it's a crowd, a milling crowd, it's getting louder and louder. Eventually, you would just at the end be like, shut the fuck up! What the fuck is this? That's the reason why people go mental at TSM fans and why they don't go mental at other fan bases. Because the other fan bases aren't doing that to the same degree, therefore it doesn't elicit the same extreme reaction. And the voices, the chattering voices of the plebeious masses aren't the same for the other fan bases as with the TSM fans. Now, let's talk a bit about the mentality of the TSM fans, because when you get this down, you really see why, essentially, people don't like them. So first and foremost, arrogance. Let's go ahead and start there, right? They speak as if they were on TSM or had accomplished anything themselves because TSM won in a video game tournament that they watched with their eyes, while in their mind thinking, I sure hope TSM wins this, TSM. They think that means they accomplished something. Like, for example, they will argue against me in a point I've made, talking about my career and my accomplishments, as though, you know, the scales were like what I've accomplished in my career, how much money I've made, things I've done, and then on their side of the scales is like how many championships TSM has. It's like, no. All that stuff's on my side. None of that stuff's on your side. You as a person and your points have none of that stuff. That's on like Reginald's side and Bjergsen's side and Dumbledore's side. On yours is just whatever the fuck you did in your life. So, you know, is this mine over here? Oh, what the fuck's that on top? It's like, there's nothing on yours. Why would you put all the TSM accomplishments on your side of the equation? Just doesn't mean anything, right?
In CSGO, an Astralis player is going to be in an echo chamber in terms of praise due to how Reddit works. They've just got in their minds that they're the best. Everything's great about them. The org's amazing. The technique of how they've developed these players is sick. They're all the ultimate professionals. Well, similarly, if Simple or Ziwoo's individual players say something, people are going to take it on board. People are going to take it as fact. People are going to put it in place of what they thought in their own minds. That's how you actually know that Nico from FaZe Clan, team he used to be in, really fucked up. That people finally started to think, maybe he's full of shit and actually doesn't know what he's talking about. Then in League of Legends, if it's a TSM player or a Fnatic player, likewise, there's going to be an insane bias where everything that they say that's good about them is upvoted, and except for the rare occasion, most of the other stuff's going to be downvoted, and you're just never going to notice that that opinion exists because it's been filtered out of the community by a few nutters. Likewise, if players like Faker, like Bjergsen say anything about any player, magically it's amazing. It's why Koreans used to praise Westerners knowing they'd get some fans and just lie and be like, yeah, he's almost as good as we are, actually, even though they didn't think that at all. That's how you know, by the way, similarly, people really dislike Jensen, probably because of his contentious early period. He's always come off as a little bit aloof, a little bit cocky, etc. So they ignore what a brilliant player he is. And it doesn't matter what he says, he has to be salty and a loser. But Bjergsen could say the same thing, and he's just a winner and wow, great trash talk. So let's go and look at the roster of this team that's underwhelmed. Right, obviously you start with the big name. The GOAT in terms of individual players in CSGO history is Simple. Now the funny thing is, there's this perception that he's slumping over the last few months in CSGO. Let me just show you this graphic a second, shall we, boys and girls? So there we go. You can see there in the top left, I've picked the LAN filter. I've picked the time span that covers from DreamHack Malmo until now on LAN. Every type of opponent, every type of map. And here's the team in Na'Vi. So the perception is that Simple is in a little slump right now. Ziwoo's way better than him. And, you know, he's fallen off his game a bit. People are questioning, like, can he even be a contender for best player in the world? Are you looking at how much this motherfucker is having to carry Na'Vi? Look at his numbers. Compare his kill to death with all the other players on his team. Compare his rating with all the other players on his team. Compare the differential of kill to death with all the other players on his team. And this is over 44 maps, pretty decent sample size. He is still posting monster numbers. It's just that he isn't at the beginning of 2019 and peak 2018 form, which was the best anyone has ever played in Counter-Strike. By the way, better than Ziwoo. I'll go back for early 2019. I'll go back for 20. Better than Ziwoo. Ziwoo's an extremely good player, but you're talking about the GOAT right now. So this shows what a monster Simple is. Plus 258 differential. Look at that fucking kill to death ratio. That's unbelievable. Now, Then you go to dig. What an utterly stupid move. He was nowhere near the best top laner. He even straight just ran it down sometimes. When he went to Academy, he was an absolute fucking disgrace how he played. Like, he played like he didn't give a fuck about the NA region or playing himself back into form. Why would he? He knows morons are just going to pay megabucks to buy him anyway to the next team. Because somehow, who needs the guy? Who needs like the hot girl with a terrible fucking personality? So all these guys get drawn in by, oh, she's so hot though. Maybe that was just with that guy. And then they go, I can't put up with her. She's just causing so much drama and so high maintenance. It's like, yeah, learn from their fucking lessons. Like, why would you be the 7th guy to come and try the same scenario when that person's shown no signs of having changed? TSM one is brain dead. Like, he is nowhere near the best top laner. This is an org that their fans want them to win, expect them to win. And the idea, let's just put this in context, that Reggie didn't want the likes of Impact, Someday, if you want to go with the residents, like Licorice now, but in 2021, he wants Huni. That is utterly flabbergasting unless you know what a moron Reginald is, and especially the last couple of years. Like, I think up until, certainly didn't think him refusing imports was ever smart, but even in that context, up until, I would say, the end of Season 8, I still thought generally he made good moves, aside from the Mike Young one, and apparently that was at Bjergsen's request. Aside from that, I thought he was doing a pretty good job as a GM, or an above-average job as a GM at a minimum. I think he's been trash ever since then. These are outside journalists, or they're journalists who exist within esports and haven't been around very long and are just using this as sort of an activist platform to push their own agenda, their own ideology, and get basically what they want for them and people who happen to, again, just share very basic biological similarities to them. Typically, these outside journalists that come in don't know the games they're talking about. They don't have a grounding in these games. They haven't shown themselves to be a fan of the games, who actually enjoys the game and what makes the game good. And yet they're then judging and making all these incredibly final judgments and trying to explain why something is the case without knowing the context. They don't know the people in question. Not only do they not know the competitors in esports, the people who run the industry, who are the ones that by implication they're implying are sexist and keeping women down or out or oppressing them. But more importantly, they don't know the women in question that have succeeded in esports. Because if they did, except for the fact that they don't really care, they're here to push an agenda anyway, they would know that it can't be the case that this kind of sexism exists in the manner that they suggest. Funnily enough, because of her personality and who she is, she's actually done it in a way where it's like, she even competed in terms of looks and fashion and how slick she is and her persona on the desk. She went head to head with the men. Now, you don't have to do that. If you're a very feminine woman, if you're a very girly woman, feel free to do you. You do it your way, make it to the top your own way, like Thorin did. That's the point there. She made it to the top due to her hard work and how good she is at the job. I'd like to see an article that didn't focus on narratives of inclusion or diversity or are women abused. I'd just like to see an article that said, what a fucking amazing commentator this person is. Woman, and she's one of the best in the world, if you indeed believe that's the way it should be categorized. How about do an article, Emily Rand, best journalist of the year. You don't have to bring up that she's a woman. It's actually irrelevant to her particular job in this case. It's how good she is at the job that's amazing, not the fact that she's able to do it while being a particular sex or gender. That's a ridiculous concept. So there are absolutely amazing women out there in esports. And one of the wonderful things about being able to point that out is, first of all, it destroys a lot of these narratives. But even worse, it shows the hypocrisy of these journalists who come in claiming the premise that I'm all about empowering women and I just want women to have a chance to succeed and I want to battle back against all the hardships of the world, and then they ignore all these aspects, or they take them and they skew it 180 the other way to fit their side. Remember, there was a hit piece about me that implied that Pansy, a pretty good commentator herself, someone who's a very old school person, Thorin and Shocks had all made it due to implementation of diversity programs and stuff, even though they'd all made it years before, and this person actually was being incredibly sexist by even implying that, because their implication was they only made it because we implemented these things where you said you had to hire a certain number of women. Nah, all the people I just mentioned made it because of how good they were, because of how hard they worked to improve, how hard they worked to get their material to be palatable to an audience, to get someone to want to pay them, to get the status that they've gotten, that they earned, that they took.
The Beatles said they get by with a little help from their friends, but I get by with a little help from my Patreon community. And this video was kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Ahmed Hadjou, Bot Pounder 420, Torin, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Goh, Tosh, and a special thanks always goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to ask me a question in my monthly video AMA? Do you want teasers to find out who are the upcoming guests? Maybe you want to take part in one of those lengthy but intense esports discussions I have with my donators, or maybe you want to suggest a guest or a topic that I could cover. Well, if any of those
tickle your fancy, put your money where your mouth is, and join the Skrilluminati today, where in the description box below there is a Patreon link.